My name is Kathy Baumgardner-Hedrick, and Steve Philippi and I undertook a very large project this year of the 250th anniversary of Palmyra. We have decided to do some oral histories of people who have lived in Palmyra. Most of them are over the age of 80 or 85, and we asked them to tell us their story about Palmyra so that we could put together a DVD that you're going to watch now that has the stories of Palmyra based on the people who have lived here. We hope you enjoy it. We've had a fun time doing it, and we think you'll learn a lot about Palmyra and the history of Palmyra through the stories of Palmyra.
My name is Jane Kline, and I'm 86 years old.
Would you say you had positive experience in the Palmyra school system?
I loved it. In our days, we all walked to school,
Right.
and if you came a distance, you were allowed to bring your lunch along because we went home at lunchtime.
That's right, I forgot about that.
Yes.
So,
And our playground was cinders from our old furnace, and then we had to run around, and many times kids came in with knees all banged up from the cinders because they fell. One thing I especially liked when we were little, we could walk all over Palmyra and we wouldn't have to be afraid of anybody. And I can remember when I was only 6 and lived on Railroad Street, I could go across the street back to the Stelzer's bologna factory and get a little bit of bologna plus an end that I could chew on the way home.
would they just give it to you, or was there a little store there? Or?
No, you would always give it, whatever you bought, you always got a little end bologna. So that I especially like
You
that.
like the bologna. What other stores do you remember from when you were growing up?
Well, let me see, Hassler's store, where now is a carpet laying place.
Slaughter's Carpet, right?
Yes.
Right.
And that's where we'd always go. I'd go to school in the morning and drop off an order, and then they would deliver, which they don't do anymore, deliver groceries.
No.
So they'd always deliver it for my mother.
Was that like the store in town? Because almost everybody mentions Hassler's. So was that the biggest store, grocery store in town?
Yeah, that's the only one that I remember because we lived on Railroad and Chestnut Street, both those different streets, and that was easy to get there. And of course, Kreider's shoe store was there, and I started working there when I was in high school, and in all I had 20 years there.
Really? I remember when I went to Kreider's, there was this X-ray machine. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, at one time they said it was dangerous and to the people that showed the shoes, so that would be the employees. And we showed it for years, and then when I came back from overseas, it was gone because they said that it was outlawed. And of course, Malks was there, and the 5 and 10 on the square, which is now the Army.
The Army, is that where Lurch's was, where the Army-Navy store is? Okay.
And of course, we went to Lee's in the old Yaffe building. Mostly we'd go to the movie on the square, which of course was 10 cents. And I can remember we went to Gone with the Wind when I was in 9th grade. And the first thing we did was go to Lee's store and to Lurch's and buy a bag of candy, which we shared.
Didn't they sell candy at Seltzer's at the movie theater?
Well, if they did, it might have been more expensive.
Oh, okay.
And maybe it was a bar. We wanted to get small pieces so we could share it. But of course, our church was very active. I was active in the church, and one thing the church would do if it snowed, they'd ring, and we couldn't have school, they'd ring their bells. That's the way we could tell if we didn't have school.
Oh, really?
Of course, we didn't have many sports in school then, but we had basketball and baseball, but no football. I mean, the years that we were in school.
You were also very active in your church through the years. What kinds of things did you do for your church?
Well, more children were interested because there wasn't any outside thing then, like today with television and everything like that. So we had a large youth group that met regularly, and Sunday school was always full, and our church was always full. But then they said, well, we didn't have anything else to do.
Let's talk about the community when you were growing up, and then the community when your children were growing up, and then
I
community
think
today.
when I was growing up, it was knitted. I would say that you knew practically everybody. You'd walk, most of us had to walk to church. We didn't have cars. And you'd see other people walking and you greeted them.
You've lived in Palmyra all your life. You were born here and you grew up here. If you were selling Palmyra to people, what would you tell them that are the best things about Palmyra?
Well, when I was little, we were very church-oriented, which we aren't today. I don't think so. But
That's how the community gathered, was in churches. Okay.
and we had a community picnic at Hershey Park. And of course, a lot of us didn't have cars, so we'd go up in the trolley car. And I think the trolley car meant a lot to us. I hated to see it go. And now, of course, when I was younger, many people worked at Hershey Factory, but the other group worked in the 4 shoe factories that we had in town. And I know my parents worked in one just about across the street for a while where we lived. And the people in there were happy-go-lucky. I don't know how they are in factories today, but they all knew each other and they got along fine. They had their lunches together and
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there again, okay, they gathered at churches, they gathered at work, you know. I believe they gathered in neighborhoods. Somebody said to me last night that you could walk down the street and people were on their front porches and you'd be chit-chatting.
And
with the whole neighborhood.
when I worked at the shoe store and I lived in Chester Street, I knew everybody. And we only had one policeman when we were little. And we didn't really need him. We didn't do anything.
Anything else you want to tell us? You did a great job. I appreciate it. All your memories and some of those little stories. I hope we're able